Welcome to Unpack the NEWMAC, where we dive into the inner workings of the conference, the stories behind the stats, and the prestigious awards that make the NEWMAC a powerhouse in Division III. We'll celebrate the academic excellence of our student athletes, the incredible leadership of our coaches and administrators, and break down the path to becoming national champions. It's a lot to unpack, and we're here to do it. It's time to unpack the NEWMAC.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Unpack the NEWMAC. My name is Lindsay Colbert, and we're really excited to welcome Cathleen Pruden to the show today. Welcome, Kathleen.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So Kathleen is a Mount Holyoke alum, as you can tell by the sweatshirt, and she was an All-American swimmer there, and she is now the head swimming and diving coach at Trinity of Texas. So we're really excited. We've had a ton of alums this year, and we're excited to welcome one of our best. So we will go ahead and jump right in. Again, you are a Mount Holyoke alum, born and raised in North Carolina. Is that correct?
Yes.
So what initially drew you to Mount Holyoke?
Yeah. Both my parents are lifelong educators. My dad was a college counselor for most of his career. So my parents did a lot to direct my college search. They knew a heck of a lot more than I did at 16. And so my search really centered around New England. My grandmother went to Wellesley. She was class of 1950 there. And so my visit at Wellesley was the one that kind of opened my eyes to a women's college and got me pretty excited about the possibilities there. And then my Mount Holyoke visit was everything I could have hoped for. College went from being this scary concept to something I was really excited about. And so it was a pretty easy decision once the finances worked out.
It's amazing. So you mentioned it being an all-women's college, obviously. Is that something that you had done in high school, or were you in a co-ed high school? Was that a big transition for you?
Yeah, I went to a private school, K through 12 co-ed school. I definitely didn't go looking for a women's college, but I think I was really, once I was on campus, aware of the ways that I think that environment would help me. And I can look back and look at, some of the things I did, like seeking out leadership positions in the SAC that I just think I wouldn't have done in a co-ed environment. And I went on a bunch of recruiting trips to a bunch of co-ed schools. And every time I was like, there was something about like 22-year-old men that was just not something I wanted to be around as a high school senior. And that made the women's colleges that much more intriguing to me.
So you obviously were a swimmer, a very successful swimmer, a multi-time All-American. Can you look back and pinpoint some of your fondest memories as a swimmer at Mount Holyoke?
I think so many, especially the further removed I am from the sport, so many of my best memories are just these little moments with teammates that kind of live on in my head. Like I never thought it would happen, but I've forgotten some of my times. But I have, vivid memories of conversations and laughs had before races. I think something that maybe was different for me than some of my peers, but I made a lot of great connections with swimmers and even some coaches on other teams. And those are really some of the great memories for me, is these connections I got to make with other folks. And, I'm still in touch with some of them on social media, but it just was able to make swimming go from being kind of this individual thing to being more of a community event and being excited to be around all sorts of folks throughout the season. There's too much good stuff in 4 years to pinpoint one moment.
I can imagine, especially when it's a successful career. I think it is funny. Like I mentioned, we have talked to so many alums this year, last year, and I always like to ask that question, like, what's your best memory? And I think pretty much across the board, it's never a race or a game, or it's always like moments with my teammates. So I think that's something that current student athletes can try to remember. Like, it's always bigger than the game. It's bigger than one race. So you went to Mount Holyoke as a psychology and education major. Yeah. When you stepped in the door at Mount Holyoke, were you expecting to be where you are now as a coach? And when did that kind of shift for you?
Yeah, really since about second grade, I thought I wanted to be a second grade teacher. So definitely didn't see this outcome. I had coached summer league and had always enjoyed coaching, but didn't really see it as a possibility. The way the education program was set up at Mount Holyoke, I was in the classroom 1 day a week for probably 4 of the 6 semesters before my senior year. In senior fall, I was in an education class where we would come back to class the next day and my classmates were like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I have like 6 days away from this class. And I was like, no, like, thank goodness I have 6 days to regroup. And that was when I realized maybe me in a classroom with, 20 kids for 180 days out of the year was not actually the best fit for me. I still love like elementary school age kids and I love just education and what I learned. But I was not seeing myself in elementary education quite so much anymore. So I took an intro to coaching pedagogy class my senior spring and loved that. Still wasn't really sure if coaching was something. I also was interning with Swimming World magazine through the last couple of years of my college career. And so I was working with them the summer after I graduated, and really stumbled into the coaching job at Bowdoin. But it's been what I think I always wanted. I just didn't know I was sort of allowed to have it.
Absolutely. I think probably no 18-year-old really knows exactly what their future path will be. But I can imagine that the psychology and education, even though you were working with elementary ed, probably translates to coaching in some ways as well.
Oh, 100%. Probably every 2 weeks I do something and my assistants laugh and they're like, if there's the elementary school teacher and I'm like redecorating our bulletin board or like, we're just gonna do this little reflection worksheet. And it's, yeah, definitely I see my formal education at play.
So you had decided or maybe stumbled into the idea of coaching, but you took steps. You went to Smith, another NEWMAC institution, to earn a master's of science in exercise and sports studies. How did your time at Smith kind of shape your philosophy or your coaching style?
Yeah, for sure. I was aware of the Smith Masters even as an undergrad at Mount Holyoke. Just we had assistants come through the department, and I was just kind of aware of them and definitely very aware of Smith. And so going there was a very intentional decision. I also spent a lot of time in my first couple of years of coaching. Like anytime I met someone who seemed cool, I would go stalk their bio and was like looking at what master's programs they'd done, kind of trying to figure out like, how do I become like them? And Smith was a place I saw pop up repeatedly. And I think what I gained there absolutely shaped so much. It's just such a practical program, like literally taking a class that I'm getting academic credit for called recruiting. And as much as you can learn in your experience as an assistant, it's way different to kind of do it in that formal structure. And I just felt like all of these pieces of the puzzle I was getting a lot of work with. And so, I mean, especially when I made the transition to being a head coach here, we had done an assignment where you had to write a coaching, like a handbook for your hypothetical team. And I took that handbook, changed a few things and like presented it to my captains and was like, all right, so this is kind of what I think our rules and expectations are. And we talked through it, but like I had done all of that work in grad school, which was perfect. And so I think just every discipline of this job was impacted by what I was doing in the classroom side at Smith.
That's amazing. 2 amazing NEWMAC institutions. So
Yeah.
proud alum from both, I'm sure. You mentioned again, you kind of stumbled into an assistant coaching job at Bowdoin. How did that come about for you? And then obviously you went to Amherst as well. So can you talk a little bit about your assistant coaching experience and how
Yeah.
that has kind of lessons you've carried with you still to this day?
Yeah, definitely. I stumbled into coaching in a very bizarre manner. There was a coach, Abby Breathauer, who was at University of Mary Washington at the time. She's just kind of talking to me at NCAAs my senior year. Like her team followed me on Instagram. And then I ran into her at Paralympic trials that following summer when I was working with Swimming World. And she was like, hey, I really think coaching needs more women and you feel like you could be a coach. Do you have any interest in college coaching? And I was like, I do. I just am scared of what that would look like. And she turned around the next week and flew to Maine for a swim camp. And the coach at Bowdoin said, I'm still looking for a candidate. And she said, I have one for you. And he called me and said, coaches at camp think you would be a great assistant coach. And I just kind of took the leap from there. I interviewed the next week and was on campus 2 weeks later, and could not have learned more than I learned in 3 years. Like, part of the decision to go to Smith was my head coach saying, as much as I'd love you to stay here forever, you can't. Like, you need to go learn some more and make the next moves in your career. But really, 95% of what we do here at Trinity from a structural perspective is what I took away from Bowdoin, and just things that I felt so aligned with. When I went to Amherst, most folks in the Smith ESS program are coaching at Smith. Due to a variety of circumstances, I was at Amherst, which I did enjoy. I'd been in the NESCAC for 3 years, had a lot of really great friends there, and was happy to stay. My Amherst experience was really impacted by COVID. We had, I guess, a semester and a half kind of normal, and then the last half of my time there was COVID impacted. And so I think what I learned at Amherst and what shows kind of in my coaching now comes from a lot of, smaller moments, taking away little things about whether it might be discipline or a little bit about practice writing, but definitely had some unique experiences from both institutions, but also would not have continued in this career without the two head coaches I had in those jobs, supporting me and encouraging me and just empowering me to believe that I could be a head coach and this is something I'm good at.
So the opportunity comes up, Trinity of Texas. How did that come about for you?
Yeah, I mean, Smith makes it very clear that their goal is to graduate head coaches. And that's something I've known I always wanted to do. Everybody always says no one's ever ready for a head coaching job. And while I agree with that, I also think I couldn't have been any more prepared than I was, coming out of 3 really great years and as assistant at Bowdoin, going into 2 years of what in some ways was like formal training and education to be a head coach. And so, that second COVID spring, looking at the job possibilities, I had heard of Trinity at that point, 9 years in New England. I was pretty intrigued by the idea of leaving my snow shovel behind. Like, we have an outdoor pool here. And I felt like Trinity really fit what intrigued me, both being, a place where academics matter and we are here to be students first. But also Trinity had a massive history of success at the conference level, not so much at the national level. And I really hoped and felt like there was more we could do nationally. And so that was really exciting to me. And so, went for it. Talked the AD into believing I was ready to take on my first head coaching job. And here we are.
So Texas, I'm imagining such probably a culture shock from New England. What was that transition like?
Yeah. So I actually interviewed via Zoom, had never been here until I drove into the state 2 days before I started. Everyone had always said like great things about San Antonio. I met all these people who were like, oh my gosh, you're going to love it. And I was like, oh, great. You've been? And they're like, no, I've just heard it's great. I was like, okay, here we go. I think, having spent so many years in small town New England, it was weird because San Antonio resembles Raleigh in a lot of ways. Like, I feel like I'm in kind of that suburbia life I'd been in. But then I also had this moment where I was like, this is the first time in the last 9 years that I haven't been able to walk to a post office or walk to my local grocery store. I can still walk to the grocery store. It's just a little further than I want to go in the Texas heat, or walk to the library, like all these things that I kind of done in small town New England, not so much here. But I am a summer soul at the end of the day. So I still probably check the weather in South Hadley or Northampton or Brunswick, like probably twice a week, just to be like, I'm doing great. This is awesome. It's still in there again, kind of thing.
Yeah. I bet now I'm like, took the dogs for a walk this morning. It was like 19 degrees. My legs were frozen. So you win. You win.
I don't mind rubbing it in sometimes. It's kind of fun.
It's beautiful. We went to San Antonio for the NCAA convention a few years ago. That was my first experience, but we took the kids. They loved Riverwalk. We did some cave visits. So it is beautiful down there for sure. So you have a few years under your belt now at Trinity.
Yeah.
When you kind of look back to year 1 and compared to now, what do you think has surprised you the most about being a head coach?
Yeah. I mean, I kind of alluded to it. I don't think you can ever be ready. I joked a couple years ago that because we've tried to do like a staff Halloween costume, we should be firefighters. Because you're just constantly have these fires that come up that you're excluded from as an assistant. Like in a good way, you have other responsibilities. And I think kind of the biggest thing that surprised me is how hard it can be to just check out and take a step back. My job description says I'm responsible 24/7. And I feel like I take that seriously and just always feeling like, you're on and even if you're not with your student athletes, you're aware of them and cognizant of what they might be doing and hoping that things are going well, even when they're not under your immediate oversight. And I mean, I say that realizing I've been really lucky and I have some awesome student athletes and, everything we've dealt with has been manageable. But I think that was just a lot and something I could never have known without experiencing it.
Yeah, I can imagine that always having to be available for your student athletes could be quite a transition because even when you're not in the office, you always have to be available.
Yeah.
I remember as an assistant watching the head coach really like have that open door policy is something special for the student athletes. So, but I can imagine that's kind of a little bit of a shock to walk
Yeah.
into.
Wow.
So as a student athlete, I feel like knowing that your coach was a successful student athlete is probably makes that relationship maybe even stronger. As an All-American swimmer yourself, how does that shape the way you coach and the way you deal with your student athletes?
Yeah. I mean, I think I just spent a lot of time thinking about the experiences I had. Sometimes it's incredibly practical. I have sets that I know worked really well for me and made me feel good and confident. And that's the outcome I want our athletes to have. And so sometimes that looks like literally giving them something I did every once in a while. You kind of hold it over their head and I'm like, no, I literally did this and I survived it. And like, come on, you can do it too. But just having that experience to rely back on. And I do think, I've had moments where it does give me some sort of confidence. I wasn't until I was a head coach that I coached a swimmer who had been faster than me in the 400 IM. And we had a woman at Bowdoin who my head coach would kind of hold that over as his sort of fact of like, you should still listen to her. Like she still knows something you don't, which I think, can help an athlete who needs that. But at the same time, like how fun was it the first time that Neely went faster than I ever had? I'm like, I would have loved to do that. I don't know what it felt like to do it. But to get to coach it and be a part of it is just as fun. But yeah, I think I had, some experiences. Everybody has to have their first conference meet, their first national meet. And to be able to know what that experience was like for me just gives me another ability to relate, probably less and less so as the years go on. Those memories are less vivid to me and they have teammates who they probably trust more. But it is really fun to, we continue to go back to Greensboro and Indianapolis most years for NCAAs. And those pools for me are filled with memories of my own experiences in the water and on deck. And I just try to use all of those things to help our athletes.
Yeah, I'm always interested I'm not a swimmer myself other than like lounging in the pool in the summer. As a head coach of swimming and diving, there's so many events and so many different skill sets. You have your distance races, you have your relays, your sprints. Do you have to be an expert now in training all of those different skill sets? Do you have people you trust to help in certain areas, or how does that work?
Yeah, I think we at Trinity take an approach that is probably the minority of schools might follow this idea. And again, took a lot from Bowdoin, and this was one of those things. And that I have myself and 2 full-time assistants, and we really truly rotate things as much as we could. A lot of programs might say, you take the distance kids, you take the IMers, you take the sprinters, like, see you in February. We'll hope it goes well. I've always felt like I'm not going to be a good coach that way. I'm going to get burned out of looking at the same 12 kids day after day. And I also think, though, our athletes respond really well to different feedback. Like, sometimes one of my assistants will say something to someone, I'm like, that isn't exactly what I said yesterday, but like, you hear it from them and you don't hear it from me. And so I think it helps us stay interested and invested. It also gives our athletes more variety of stimulus, feedback. We all make connections in different ways. So maybe it is a little bit more on us because we're striving to be really good and educated about every component of the sport. But I think it's better for us in the long run, and even just for the longevity of myself and my assistants in this career.
Absolutely. Another thing that's fairly unique about swimming and diving, and maybe some of the other individual sports, cross country, track and field, is you oversee the men and the women.
Mhm.
So how do you approach kind of building one culture as a whole, but maybe also honoring the individuality of the men's team and the women's team?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely still not something we've perfected, that's for sure. Um, I think a lot of it comes back down to our teams set their own set of goals. Like, men and women have separate sets of goals. Do they look incredibly similar? Absolutely. But they have their own sets of goals. We also, I think, benefit from the fact that our conference meet and our national championship are combined meets. When I was in the NESCAC championship is 2 separate meets. And so, your women's team has to have their own identity. They can't be relying on the men's team to succeed when the men aren't there at their most important weekend of the year. So we really do have the ability to do everything together here, and to, as a men's team and a women's team, kind of use each other to build up and support in that way. The men and the women both always have their separate sets of inside jokes, and they have a lot that goes on separately. But so much of what we do here is done together that I think, as long as we're kind of pivoting their corners of their culture towards their group's goals, it's worked pretty well for us so far. But every year, evolves and looks a little bit different.
Obviously, it's certainly worked pretty well for you. You've had a lot of success, really at every level, whether it was Mount Holyoke to now you've won conference championships, coach of the year. What are your biggest drivers for success?
I think I've never been somebody who can get really excited and just be driving towards conference championship and nationals. Like, that's not tangible enough to get me out of bed in October. And so I look a lot more at the just day to day, like, what does it look like for this one athlete to improve today? And hopefully, if they make some technical connection, like, that's going to feed us towards February and get us at a conference championship. But there's just so many wins we can have day to day that kind of are success. And so that's really the biggest thing for me. And the goal being that, you build all of those things together. There's a book, the Confidence Code, there we go, that's what it's called, that I read maybe right before I started head coaching, that just talks a lot about, like, the little, I'm not going to come up with the right words for it now, like the little grains of confidence, and like, confidence is built on past experiences. And so, I try to give our athletes just infinite opportunities where they can have that. But, like, we as coaches also need those moments where we say, hey, something went well today. And that gives, me the confidence that this team will succeed at the end of the season, and hopefully gives them the confidence that they can perform at the end of the season. And so just seeking those moments and trying to create those opportunities is really the driver for me, I'd say.
So I think that maybe answered my next question, which was, what does it take to develop your athletes into successful swimmers, both at the conference level, but also the national level? But I guess
I'm still waiting on the answer to that one. I can't tell you how many talks I've been to where someone gives a talk on like, how can you be good at conference and NCAAs? But yeah, we're figuring that one out.
yeah. I mean, I think if there was a cheat code, everybody would do it.
Yeah.
It's not that easy.
Right.
For sure. I think there's some institutions who seem to find a way to be there year in and year out, but it's certainly not easy.
No.
Never is, right? But I guess how do you balance, because again, the uniqueness of the sport is that it is a team sport, but also it's an individual sport.
Yeah.
So how do you balance kind of chasing that team success while also developing your individual athletes to give them a chance to qualify maybe for the national championship?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's the beauty of having these individual goals and the team goals. Another idea that is ingrained deeply in me because it was ingrained deeply in the program at Bowdoin is this idea of like infinite contributions. I think it's really easy to look at a swim meet and say, hey, she won the 100 free. She scored points. She just contributed to this team's success. And what is not as obvious to the spectator is, hey, she asked that girl if she needed help with chemistry studying because she used to be the TA for that class. And he noticed that his teammate looked really frustrated today and asked if he wanted to go to lunch. And like, those are all contributions that we're seeking to highlight. And I think realizing that our athletes have to do all of those things well to succeed in the pool. Like you're not going to, maybe I shouldn't say that, you're very rarely going to go best times and have fun coming to the pool every day if you aren't also connected with your teammates and wanting to support them, because this team has a goal to win a conference championship. It also has a goal to, outdo the other gender on GPA, and all of those things build towards each other. And if I am qualifying for nationals, I'm also probably going to be first or second in an event at conference. And so my individual goals can support the team goals. My individual contributions outside of performance is going to make this team stronger, which is going to build towards our team goals. And I think, kind of the hardest leap to make, but one that I think we've done fairly well with, is also recognizing that pushing my teammates and my teammates also succeeding is not at my detriment. Like if I want to be on this 400 freestyle relay, I better hope that the girl next to me is also getting better at the 100 free today, because 4 of us need to do really well for that relay to qualify for nationals. And, I think that's really hard for a lot of folks to manage, the emotions that go on of like, oh my God, she beat me, but somehow we're all still better because of it. And so that's the other piece of the puzzle that I'd say, kind of takes the most work, but we figure out a little bit better every year and with every evolving training group.
So I'm always interested, because so many of your student athletes have won individual honors, whether it was Swimmer of the Year, national championships. Outside of the kind of technical skill, because obviously that's sometimes something that maybe you're born with, the athletic ability or something like that, and obviously you have to work hard, but what kind of personality traits do you see in successful swimmers or divers over the years that maybe they tend to share?
Yeah. It's just so interesting because every year it can be like, how did these people pull it off? And it's, they definitely have some teammates who have worked harder and have been way more engaged. And, it's hard when you watch someone do everything right and just not succeed at the same level of somebody else. But I think probably something I first became aware of at Bowdoin, and now I can look back and see some of it in myself, and I see it in athletes now, is just sort of an ability to know yourself and understand a little bit of what you need, that ability to be a little bit of your own coach. It's, you're underwater for a lot of time, and every time our athletes come to the wall, they look at us wanting feedback and wanting to know what they're doing. They can't always hear it. Their ears are still clogged with water, but I think the ones who really succeed are the ones who, are making corrections as they go and can really learn some productive self-talk to get themselves through the moments where, right, like swimming is an individual sport. No one else can kind of bear the brunt of what they're doing while they're doing it. It's all on the person in the water. And so I think just an ability to, maybe a lot of it is self-talk, but just an ability to get yourself where you're going, because you're the only one who's going to get there in an individual sport. Even if it's on a relay, like your leg is still just you. And so I think that's definitely something that sets a lot of our more successful athletes apart from one another. Not to say we don't have plenty of folks who can do that, and some of them just have a little bit more natural talent that, puts them onto a national stage or something.
Absolutely. It's always interesting. I feel like I was like speaking to my husband about this as well, like with like elite athletes, so many elite athletes are just so driven that like nothing will ever get in their way. It doesn't matter what it is.
Yeah.
So, and maybe that's innate as well. Like maybe you can't teach that.
Right.
So it's always for me interesting to hear kind of the psychology of it from a psychology major. I think you touched on it a little bit as well. You want your student athletes to not only be successful in the pool, but to be leaders outside of the pool. How do you kind of develop your student athletes into leaders and have them embrace leadership roles?
Yeah. I mean, we've experimented with a variety of different leadership structures here. And I think, no matter what kind of formal titles we're putting on leaders in a year-to-year basis, developing leaders comes back to developing accountability. And, I talked definitely early in the recruiting process about part of our role here being like to teach skills. Like you are going to grow in 4 years here. I really hope a 17-year-old looks a lot different than a 22-year-old and just has a lot more self-ownership and much better communication skills. And there's all of these things I want you to be able to do well when you go get a job and are employed somewhere and living outside the kind of walls of a college. And I think anytime we're doing that, we're giving every athlete more leadership skills and abilities. Some people are going to put that into a more formal role. But as far as I'm concerned, like the person who looked at their teammate this morning and was like, get in, she said, warm up started. What are you still doing? Like that is its own little dose of leadership, no matter who it came from. But that still has to be learned. We did an exercise this fall on correcting negativity. Like, yeah, you can tell me you're going to tell Susie to perk up if she's being sad, but like literally what would you say? Like look your teammate in the eye right now and, help them change their behavior. And that's something that we're, trying to kind of facilitate happening on a regular basis.
That's great because it's something that will serve them later in life as well. So really developing those leaders is amazing. Academically, your student athletes have also seen a lot of success. How do you reinforce the concept that success in the pool and success in the classroom kind of go hand in hand?
Yeah. I think thankfully we don't have to work too hard at that, right? I think that happens pretty early in the recruiting process, that we explain, like you're here to go to school. Swimming, I always say, is this fun extra thing you get to do. Don't get me wrong. It was absolutely part of my like core identity through 99% of my college career that I was a swimmer, but still cared infinitely more about the classroom than the pool at the end of the day. And so thankfully, most folks who are choosing to be here are doing that because they want a degree, they want to do research, they have other things they want to do. And I think the team, setting a team GPA goal. Last 2 semesters ago, our men's team beat our women's team for the first time, we're pretty sure, in program history on the GPA front. And they were back with fire the next semester of like, yeah, that's, the men want to hold on to that, and the women say that's never happening again. And so I think, they're in an environment where they have academic opportunities, and luckily we've recruited people who are going to seek those out. And we're here for backup and support when the going gets tough, but so much of that is driven by the student athlete.
So you're certainly an amazing role model as a top 30 honoree for NCAA Woman of the Year. Not many women can say that. An amazing honor. If you can think back about that experience and that recognition, how has that shaped your approach to mentoring your student athletes?
Yeah, I think that was just such a fun opportunity and fun event to get to be a part of, and just something Mount Holyoke got very excited about. And something that Lori Hendricks, who was the Mount Holyoke AD at the time, put on my radar before they'd ever told me they were picking me to write the personal statement and do it. And so what I kind of took away from that, it was a weekend back at the time, that's how they did the kind of ceremony, and all was just, there were 29 other people who had also incredibly successful college careers, academically, athletically, and in their involvement in the community. And at the same time, all of these women were just so many other people we'd spent time with, in my own college career. And so I think that to me was just not an anyone can do this, but everybody that I was around was striving for the same things all the time. Nobody was moving through my experience at Mount Holyoke, not wanting to be successful. And so I think about that, with our athletes now, men and women, Brene Brown has a quote somewhere, a story she tells about, assuming everyone's always giving their best. And I think that's, pretty relevant. And usually if someone's not trying to give their best, they've got a much bigger problem going on. And that then becomes kind of our job as a coach to figure out what's going on there and to help that athlete succeed in whatever it is they're struggling with. And so I think really, to me, the Woman of the Year was just a really cool kind of cherry on top highlight of my collegiate experience. And I think that award especially embodies what we're trying to do in Division III, and just being so well-rounded. And so, would love to think that everyone I'm working with is aspiring to be successful kind of on all fronts. And, maybe someday that shows up with a woman I've coached getting nominated for that award as well.
So as a coach, have you had an opportunity to maybe work with, whether it be a student athlete or an assistant who kind of aspires to be a head coach, and what advice have you been able to give them?
Yeah, I think through collegiate roles, and then also having spent a lot of time coaching camps in the summer, definitely know a lot of coaches who strive for that. One in particular who I encouraged to apply to Smith and is there now. And it's really fun to watch her, have a very similar experience to me and just see what someone else takes away from that. But ultimately, I think being prepared to be a head coach comes back to just embracing every opportunity you have, and also taking initiative to figure out what you don't know that you would like to know, and what you haven't yet learned how to do that you think would serve you in the future. But I think, any of our assistants who are doing well at their jobs are ultimately going to be as prepared as you can be to be a head coach someday. And I don't think you have to have the same strengths I might have had as an assistant to be a great head coach, because we're all going to bring something different into this role and do it, in a way that suits our personality and our outlook on the sport and on collegiate athletics.
So I was shocked to learn this last year. Meg French from MIT was the first woman to win an NCAA Division III national championship. So Luckily enough, that's a NEWMAC institution.
Yeah.
I was able to talk to her about it and kind of get her thoughts on it. But for you to kind of see a woman win a national championship for the first time at the D3 level, why is that representation important for you and for every other woman coming up through the ranks?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I still get like goosebumps when I think about what we got to watch transpire on that pool deck over the course of 4 days. Over the course of 6 days, so yes, Meg's the first woman to do that. But what is even cooler to me about that experience, I'm like getting excited thinking about this, talking about this, is it's not just a woman, it was a mom doing it. Meg had her baby on the pool deck 2 days before that meet started. She had one of just a pivotal mile swim. We're all standing on the side watching this girl squeak in higher than she should have. And I turn around and her husband's up in the stands holding their baby and she's running off deck to breastfeed. And like that to me was just like, that's almost what sets it apart more than her being a woman, was like her being a mom to 2 young kids. And I think in the time that I've been coaching and I've been even as an athlete, like how many women have you seen leave coaching to go be a mom, which like absolutely respect and understand why that happens. And, who knows what the future looks like for me in this career. And then, you see like John Dill is now back at Wellesley, back in the head coaching chair, and that team is doing some awesome things. So, taking some time to be a parent first before a coach, I absolutely understand and respect, and it makes all the sense in the world to me. But to watch Meg do that with as much as she had on her plate is just beyond cool. I think she's a phenomenal role model and just a phenomenal leader. Like, love listening to her talk to her team and have interactions with her athletes. And just, the example that sets for the women and the men on her team. Matt Rest is awesome. No one can deny he wasn't a very young interim head coach when he was running the team for a little bit last year when Meg was on maternity leave, but you could watch the athletes give him all the respect in the world because Meg had set that up where it was like, whether it's me or whether it's him or whether it's Kristen Berry or whoever is in charge of you right now, they have that respect and they can see, what Meg has done for them in that program. And so I think to watch that team succeed was just so cool, to watch them do so well, and definitely was really awesome and neat and fun for me. Like, being a mom, absolutely something I would love to do someday. I don't know what that looks like. You don't know how to be a head coach until you've been a head coach. You certainly don't know how to be a parent and a head coach at the same time until you get there someday. I can get home some days and think like, I'm too tired to make myself dinner. And someday that is not a valid option when there's also a small child who needs food, and like, you're going to figure it out then. But so cool to watch Meg succeed while also realizing like her family, which includes 2 small kids, is also in Greensboro this week watching this happen. And I think just kind of certainly showed me like, absolutely, this is possible. And I hope some other people saw that as well and said, okay, this is what I could do in whatever field I'm going to be in.
That's amazing. I love that sentiment. As a mom myself who did step away from coaching to be a mom, just because the way it worked out.
Yeah.
And, to find my way into a different line of work. And here I am today. But it is amazing to see the women who succeed doing both, because I think head coaching and momming are 2 of the hardest things you can do, because really neither one you can shut off. It never ends. So it is amazing what she did. And it's amazing that, like you said, so many people had an opportunity to watch it. Looking ahead for you, you're kind of like mid-season here, swimming. Those winter sports have these long kind of, I don't want to say drawn out, but it feels like it sometimes.
Oh, people always ask, when is your season? I'm like, September through March.
Yeah.
All of it.
It never ends, actually. What excites you about this season? What are you excited about this group of athletes, and what goals do you have this season?
We've got a really awesome first year class. Not to take away anything from all the upperclassmen too, but the first years have just come in on fire. They are like mentally in the game, physically prepared, and have just been succeeding in ways that continue to surprise themselves, which is so fun. As a program, we changed conferences this year. So this is our first year in the SAA. And so, we kind of maintain our goals of being a conference championship winning program. And so there's a lot of unknowns that come with doing that in a new place with new people in February. But, it starts to sneak up on us pretty soon here. So we're definitely excited to see how that plays out and what we can do. And most of our team is going to Kentucky for the first time in our lives on Thursday. And so, there's all the little joys along the way that we get to seek out.
Kentucky, huh? I've never been either. You'll have to tell me about it. Obviously, I think most teams at the start of a season, they're obviously your end goal is to win a national championship. That's, you have those big goals, but I'm sure you have smaller goals as well. At the end of the season, only one team can really hold that trophy. And if it's maybe not your team, how do you define success with those smaller goals?
Yeah. We've done a lot of work before with process goals and trying to pick out these little moments day to day. We set this year just goals for winter training, and what we're trying to accomplish in the 3-week chunk before we start classes again. I think I kind of alluded to it before, but I am seeking success every day because it can look like all of these little moments. And so, even if the cards don't fall, which makes it sound like it's not in our control. Even if we don't do what it takes and someone else does what it takes to win a conference championship, have we gone lifetime best times? Have we gone school records? That is one of the nice things about swimming and diving is there are so many ways you can be the last team in the conference and still have had the most successful year in program history. And so I think, we take a moment when we step back from the big picture at the end of February and at the end of March to say, what are all of the other things we also accomplished? And, we as a team know what a lot of those things are. And I think some of them will surprise us when we look at some record stat book later and go, oh, and we did that too. That's pretty cool. And we can be proud of that.
So I'm going to put you on the spot here.
Oh, gosh.
Obviously you seem to love Texas and you've had a lot of success there. But would you ever consider if anything opened up back at maybe your alma mater or maybe any other NEWMAC schools? Would you ever consider a move back up north?
Yeah, you really are putting me on the spot. I think that question gets harder more and more as time evolves. I'm, engaged right now. My fiance is from San Antonio. There's, that whole other life piece of like, okay, we want to be parents and he has a lot of family in San Antonio. Like you're doing a lot more at that point than just chasing a job. And so, I think I have great experiences and really fun memories at so many institutions in the NEWMAC and the NESCAC. There's a lot of reasons to be, excited about those. But I think every day that goes on, it also becomes infinitely harder to envision the kind of like life leap that something like that would take. So I don't know, I guess never say never, but there's nothing right now where I'm like, oh my gosh, that would be a reason to leave Trinity. Like not when there's as many opportunities as there are here professionally and just for me personally in San Antonio. I can't say ever at any point in my life that I'd live my adult life in Texas, but now, I see that for myself.
See, I put you on the spot and it was a great answer. You nailed it.
I still have family in Massachusetts. So like, I'm not giving up my like week of the summer on Martha's Vineyard. Like those things are still at play, but you all can kind of keep your January and February to yourself.
Yeah. You can't beat summer on the Cape, no one gets it until you get it.
Yeah.
So I've taken up a ton of your time here in season, but I have just a few quick kind of lightning round questions just to wrap it up here. Yeah. So quickly, favorite event to coach?
400 IM.
I should have known. Favorite event to watch? Is it the same?
Yeah.
You're biased. It's fine.
I know. I gave a whole talk at our coaches convention last year. Like it holds a really special place in my heart.
I don't blame you. It would hold a place in my heart too if I was a national champion. Hardest event to swim?
200 back. I stand by that day in and day out. Most people disagree with me, but if you do the 200 back well, nothing's more horrific.
So if I ask you next week, maybe you'd say Kentucky, but up till now, your favorite place you've traveled to for a meet?
2 years, 3 years, 4 years ago. I don't know. At some point since I've been at Trinity, we went out to swim Occidental, Pomona, and Caloo. And it was just one of those trips where like we had a really good time. We did some nice sightseeing. We were outside in January. It was a really good weekend. That's got to be up there.
I sense a theme of warmth for you.
Yeah, summer soul, I'm telling you.
You just want to be warm. Any book, podcast, or show that you're really into right now?
I do not have the brain capacity to be really into anything right now. But go-to background TV is always going to be something crime related, but it can't be scary. So yeah.
That's pretty niche.
Yeah, there's the right level of like Law and Order that's not scary. I can't even think of other things now. Yeah, like you said, I'm in like the thick of season where it's like after my 12 hours on campus, we have enough time to like pack our lunch and go to bed before we do this again. So I'm not deep in anything.
So you didn't watch the finale of Stranger Things then?
I've never seen any of it. Not my cup of tea.
You must know. There was a Smith shout out in it. So
I did see that on Instagram.
There you go. So you got it covered.
Yeah.
All right. Last little question. Favorite thing about Western Mass?
I'm going to have to give you two things. Ice cream and the ability to be 15 minutes away from a hike. I have an ice cream list. If anyone's in Western Mass, everywhere you need to try. And I know some people would say that those are fake mountains, but all I want is like a nice little 45-minute walk up, great view, go back down. That combination of events can't be topped on a beautiful fall day. So that is the moment I would come back to New England for.
Love a hike. I might need, because going back to Cape Cod, my like lifetime bucket list is to try every single ice cream place on Cape Cod. Because we do go back every summer and I lived there for a couple of years. So I might need you to send me some Western Mass recs for ice cream. So that next time.
I don't know that I've hit them all, but I know everything worth your time. How about that?
You got to hit me up. Well, Kathleen, I want to thank you so much for taking an hour out of what I'm imagining is the busiest time for you. I love chatting with you. Like I said, you're one of our alums that we are most proud of. Top 30 NCAA Women of the Year honoree, successful at Mount Holyoke, successful at Smith, successful where you are now. So we just want to shout you out as being an amazing, amazing alum of the NEWMAC. And thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. This has been a lot of fun, and I'm always happy to relive and remember how much fun I had at Mount Holyoke and at Smith as well.
Awesome. Good luck the rest of the season. Couple months to go here. We'll be keeping an eye on how Trinity does in the national championship, and hopefully we'll see you there.
Awesome. Thank you, Lindsay.
Thank you.